Your name comes first in the title.
It does.
Cyborg versus robot.
Da-da-da-da-da.
Yeah.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Christa, and I am a cyborg.
And I am 5, and I am a pseudo-robot and a playbot.
Good. Yes. Yes, you are.
Yeah.
That-
Or playbot subscriber. Yeah, I don't think I would be a playbot.
So
We'll get to the magazine names when
we will get to the magazine.
names.
The magazine is important.
So this week we are talking about Real Humans, Season 1, Episode 6.
Yes, called Sly Leo, and it aired
19th of February, 2012.
its first airing.
Yeah, first airing.
Yeah, because the show has now played
We
in
are
a
not in the
lot of
past.
places. No, we are not in the past, but it's been rebroadcast in many nations across the world.
And we're also going to talk about The Trail's End, finally, which was directed by David Rosenbaum.
That's right.
And it came out earlier this year, which is 2014, if you're listening
Yeah.
in the future.
Yeah, Trail's End we first watched at the beginning of making this podcast. It's a really good looking little short, and I liked it.
Oh, it is spectacular looking. But when you look at David Rosenbaum's resume, he's worked with David Fincher, and he did the previs for his movies The Curious Case of Benjamin Button and Zodiac.
Yes, he's a visual effects guy. This is his first pass at writing and directing something. Yeah. It's a retelling of the Bonnie and Clyde setup. But so Bonnie wrote real life Bonnie Parker wrote a number of poems about their experiences, and one is called The Trail's End. Okay. And this short refers to that, and also the female character's name is Bonnie, and it's sort of retelling the beginning of the Bonnie and Clyde story, but with androids.
We don't know at the beginning of this short that Bonnie is an android because she's compared to Clyde, she's much more advanced, like significantly.
And do you think, because at the end, when there is that sort of reveal, he slides his finger down her kimono and sees the, what would you call that?
I actually kind of liked it because I thought of it as vents. Like if you have a
It does look
body
like-
full of hardware.
It does look
And-
like vents. So do you think until that point he didn't know that she was also an android? He is established off the bat
Yeah.
as
I don't think he
an
knew.
android, and he didn't know. I wondered.
But we've seen it in Real Humans that they've had the different kind of levels and ages
Right.
of androids, and that's, to me, seems to be a new thing in these sorts of stories. Like even Blade Runner, all of their androids were the same. They were
Right.
slightly different in their awareness of themselves, but they weren't different on the outside. They looked like people.
Right.
They show Clyde in this one. He has his big open venting, or his open part of his
Right,
chest
it's like
comes
neck
right up to
down.
below his neck. His hands are robot hands rather than human-looking hands.
Yeah.
But Bonnie, she looks real. She makes a comment about Clyde, who I don't think is named in this.
No, but we'll call him Clyde.
We'll call him Clyde. She mentions that Clyde smells really good, but that he might be too old to realize it.
When she says you smell good, did it make you think of Small Wonder smelling good?
Well, you do want to smell good
Yeah.
if you're a robot.
If you're a robot.
And no one wants a smelly robot.
No, that's true.
Do we want to talk about sort of how... I really like the way it was scripted, but to me it also felt like a portfolio, like a show reel.
It's this like futuristic world because of the technology that we see, these little like display units in the wall.
It felt very Blade Runner to me. It's noir-ish.
Right, yeah.
Like Blade
And then the
Runner
crooked
was.
blinds and the wallpaper at the end of the hall and the
Chiaroscuro lighting.
yeah, exactly. And he gets a knock at the door, and it's a very adorable and very well designed mailbot.
A U.S. Postal Service mailbot, and it is a direct descendant of the post boxes that would be on the corner.
Yeah. And he prints out a little flyer and hands it to Clyde, and it's a report to consignment facility notice for immediate termination / recycle.
He doesn't seem to have as much wrong with him as Odie from Real Humans.
Yeah,
he seems pretty functional.
But we know nothing about why he would be terminated, if it's a Blade Runner thing where like they get 4 years and then they're done, or if he glitched a la Odie.
I thought when I first watched this that this whole building was maybe just android housing.
Right.
Although I'm not sure why Clyde needs his own apartment. Bonnie has her own apartment, but she also entertains guests. She is a prostitute.
Yes.
Perhaps he is also a prostitute.
Yeah, we don't know what he does.
They do seem to go with the Asimov's rules, again in this, in which Clyde doesn't seem to be able to hurt anyone. When he goes in, he hears somebody in Bonnie's room assaulting Bonnie, and he goes over and pulls a man off of Bonnie. Our human pulls his gun on Clyde. Clyde disarms him handily.
Yes, easily, without effort.
Tosses the gun to the floor.
Yeah.
They struggle a bit more, and Bonnie shoots our guy, and that's when we find out he's a cop.
Yeah.
So it's Bonnie's last day as well.
Right. Because people don't take kindly to cop killers. She says something like that.
Yeah.
Right. Clyde sees that she's also an android, and she's saying you should get out of here because the cops are coming, and Clyde has this sort of moment of like making a choice and reaches out his hand.
Yeah. This echoes a little bit our Ove and B.
You think so?
Well, B's on the run now. She passed as human for a while. Now she has to go into hiding.
It also reminded me of the rogue bots.
Oh, the rogue bots. Okay. It reminded you of
Miska A. All being on the run and killing people. And as far as like getting the notice of termination and that you have to like turn yourself in and your life is ended based on someone else's
that's
rules.
what they're escaping.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of like our rogue bots a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Same premise. Blade Runner. That was the same thing they wanted.
I'm right.
They wanted their lives.
So we keep seeing this, but it's just so well done.
Oh, and the horse hologram was another weird little detail, which was just, it was showing off like how talented a visual designer David Rosenbaum and his team.
Right, the VFX team, which is Lee Carlton.
They may be called Scarecrow.
There you go.
Like all of those visual tricks, and they hit the robot hands were this built thing, a costume piece, the hologram, all the little digital effects. I don't think anything was superfluous.
No, tastefully showing off.
Yeah, exactly.
But even in the moment that like he's watching the hologram, was it projecting from his hand?
It was like a little.
It was sort of like a little moment of like.
I thought of it and was just that he was pointing it sort of at a space in the table, and the little horse was clip-clopping along.
It's sort of like, what does an android do when he's a little bored? He's like, oh, I'll just watch my little holographic horse jump around.
I wanted that for my cats.
You want to see your cats chase around a little horse?
I
I love her apartment. Did you notice the statue of Mary? It's like got some of her clothes draped over it, like some of Bonnie's clothes.
No, there was so much.
It is a rich and lush film to look at.
There's the wallpaper in the back of the hallway, this blue wallpaper, which every time I saw it, I was just thinking, I wonder where I can get that wallpaper. Perhaps David Rosenbaum will tweet to us where he got...
That's our biggest question.
Yeah. That's what we really want from this podcast.
We should maybe ask Chelsea Oliver, who was the production designer.
That would be fantastic.
She would probably be...
I love that wallpaper.
Let us know.
Where can I find it?
Thank you.
Everything seemed paid attention to in this. From the sets, which were really stylized, the artwork on the walls.
Yeah. It's very thorough.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone should probably watch it because it's really great.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
But it made a bunch of Vimeo staff pics.
Yeah, and some festival circuit stuff.
Yeah.
Which is all very understandable. Well-deserved attention.
So shall we get into the episode itself?
Yeah, Real Humans. No, yeah, okay.
At the beginning of the episode, we see the aftermath of the explosion at Hubot Mart. We hear a lot of screams. We see some fire trucks.
Yeah, the screaming, I think, is coming from badly burnt Jonas.
Which we see after we see a partial torso and head of our boy Max.
Yeah, so we do find out very quickly that Max did perish.
And we see our best sort of view of how a Hubot is made. We get our best look at the insides of a Hubot.
Like the sort of skeletal or structural stuff.
It looks like there's a sort of... He was split at a section.
And you had said last week, you were hoping to see him walk through the flames a la Terminator, all skeletal, and And so it's sort of like that. I mean, part of his torso is carried out from the flames, and you see some of the body. No?
Yeah, you do. It's just a little sadder.
It's a little sadder.
But
it is not a triumphant...
And I was thinking at the beginning of this episode, even seeing Max come out, even in this shape, I thought, well, his head is intact, which is where their digital brain is kept.
Yeah.
I was holding out hope for Max that we would see him again, because we have also seen several versions of Max.
That particular
Hubot, the
G-Max something.
G-Max 75, I think.
I think so too. In
other parts of the world, we saw him at the rental, whatever that was called. Rent-a-bot. I don't...
Hubot.
I want to remember where he came from.
Where that particular...
Rent-a-hub.
Rent-a-hub!
So, that was hard.
Thank you.
So I was holding out hope for Max that Leo would maybe go back to the Rent-a-hub, grab...
And just switch out the brains.
Brains, and then we would get our Max back.
Because I think we know that you can do that. Because we even also in this episode, at some point when...
We learned about digital clones.
Yeah, where we learned that you can be cloned and then buy a Hubot to put that information into. So, Of course, that doesn't happen for Max.
No. Jonas is our screaming, burning body, and he's still alive.
Yeah. Badly
Not
injured.
doing well.
No. That's going to be a slow recovery process.
If Jonas's body actually survives it. Or if we get Jonas in the form of a digital clone. Digital clones seem to be everywhere now, and B seems to be a digital clone. It's freaking me out.
Yeah, she might be. I guess she might be. I mean, so last time when we realized or learned that she's Leo's mom, and so was she always a Hubot, and David Eicher had her as his partner or the mother of Leo, or did he recreate her because we know that she drowned?
When we get to Leo's flashback scene, I think I can address that.
Okay. Well, I can wait.
We can talk about Leo because Leo has escaped from this explosion. We can follow Leo the whole way, right away.
All right.
I'm fine with that.
Okay. So Leo is falling asleep at the wheel. He's driven away from the explosion.
He stole Jonas's...
He borrowed the keys. He asked for the keys. Okay, he demanded the keys.
He
took the keys and stole the car. We think he's heading for... Well, you and I weren't sure. I think we disagreed. I was pretty sure.
You were pretty sure.
He was heading for...
I was...
The Engman's house, which he was. So he's like falling asleep at the wheel. It crashes. He gets out of the car. Basically passes out on the street.
This was... who directed this episode? It was...
Levin Aiken, who was the same director as last week. Mm-hmm.
And this was the first time in the show that I really noticed the score. Richard Bogard, I believe that's how you pronounce that. It's the first time I really noticed his score. He crashes on the street and collapses after he gets out of the car and starts walking towards the house. Yeah. And I think there's a crane overhead shot that pans down, and Anita rolls in on some weird side
He's having like a hallucination.
I didn't like that.
Of her. That shot?
Her basically moving in like somebody pushed her in on a shopping cart. Mm. And the music that we're hearing seems to be a variation of this track called The Parsonage. And I don't know if that's a translated title.
I feel like reading the track listing of that score has spoilers in it.
Well, I think it came out between first and second.
I'm going to look away.
Okay, look away.
Thank you.
So anyway... Richard Bogard's music comes in, it's this light little piano, and we hear the flapping of the paper, and the sound design just really works for me in this episode in particular.
Yeah, it stood out to me also. I noticed the score and also the sourced music in this as well, because there's a few times where they've licensed things that stood out to me.
Did you note any of the licensed songs?
I tried to figure out what they were, and I couldn't.
Okay. If we can find out, we'll post those tracks, since this episode was exceptionally well... The sound design seemed exceptionally well done, and the music research, it was probably worth mentioning. And then I think the next time we see Leo is this...
being wheeled into the hospital, and he has a flashback.
Right. Well, we do see him when Niska and B drive by him, but we'll talk about that in their arc. So he's picked up by the ambulance and then driven to the hospital. When he does get driven away in the ambulance, Anita is looking out the window and looking at the ambulance pulling away.
Well, she hears the siren. I wasn't sure if she saw it. They're really like illustrating how close he was to finding her.
Yeah.
And that she hears a siren outside. Inga leaves for work and looks down the street and sees that someone's being put into an ambulance. Like, it's just like really showing you how almost everything changed. Or like how close Leo got, and no.
Yeah, and Leo really wants to meet Inga. And he's going to get his wish. Not this episode.
Yeah. He knows she's a lawyer, and he knows that that's where they bought Mimi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's hard to talk about the separate storylines because they now are integrated so well together.
Everything's sort of careening towards each other.
The rhythm that the show is cut at keeps you kind of moving forward and giving you little glimpses back and forth, but it's hard to talk about in that way.
Yeah.
So Leo in the hospital having his flashback, and we get even more about his childhood.
In a really disturbing scene.
Very disturbing. So David Eicher he's post-surgery.
Leo is post-surgery, yeah. The kid is clearly post-op, and
he's looking good. He's looking drugged and shaky.
Yeah, and David Eicher plugs him in and says, "Do you remember me? Do you remember your own name?"
The basic response is, "Why didn't you let me die? I want to be with my mother. I want to be dead." And then we get the most horrific scene.
Yeah. Revived zombie, maybe Hubot Leo, has been brought back to life, expressed that might have been against his will, and so David Eicher carries him outside and holds him underwater, saying, "Is this what you want? Is this what you want? You want to be with your mom?" What do you think he says? "You remember what it was to die?"
It was horrifying.
It's horrible. It's a horrible scene. And then Leo, I guess his innate animal instinct to survive, says, "I want to live."
Yeah.
I feel like David Eicher could have handled that differently. They could have talked about it. He could have given little Leo some time to process his feelings. I don't feel like he had to threaten him with drowning to get Leo to want to live. But it's an awful thing to do. I mean, is David, maybe David's a curl-twisted guy.
Well, something clearly happened to David Eicher that has him working in a workshop in his home rather than for the Hubot Corporation. Because it seems like all of these things are all breaking the rule things.
Yeah.
David Eicher does not seem like the type of person who is making rational decisions.
No.
And maybe the best decisions for his creations.
No. Blurry lines for David Eicher around what might be right and wrong.
So back to the present.
Back to the present. That's the flashback. And present-day Leo is in the hospital. They're surrounded by a team of doctors. They're saying, because of his temperature, that he's been dead for a few hours, but he has full brain activity.
Yeah. They basically don't know what's going on with him.
Yeah. But they're like, "We found this," and his little power cable, and they plug him in. And he comes physically back to life.
Right. Temperature rises, pulse rises, they throw a bunch of stats. Then we see our intelligence guy again. Carl. We see Carl with the doctor, and he starts laying it out. All the patient info is classified, and you never saw this guy, basically. Mm-hmm. Our doc stands up for herself, says, if you want this guy to live, he's got major serious infections.
Right, I'm the only one who can help him.
Yeah.
And Carl says, then you're going to have to take a leave of absence.
Yeah. She
says we both want him to live, but for different reasons, I think.
For different reasons, but I think I liked the aspect of her personality, which is just, you need a specialist in this area, and I am the specialist in this area. You don't have anyone better than me.
That's right.
So you have to take me.
That's right.
I love her doing that. I hope she sticks around.
We don't see a lot of her, but I like her too. She seems like a smart, tough cookie.
And then we get the ridiculous scene.
The Men in Black scene?
The men and women in black.
There's one woman. They burst into the hospital room. They have the earpieces. They're all wearing the black suits. Unplug the monitors and wheel Leo out.
Yeah.
The one fell swoop.
It does feel a little bit like...
I
do expect to see Tommy Lee Jones and Will Smith at some point.
Yeah.
Walk through that.
It was very funny. So he's been transferred. It looks very makeshift. I mean, he's just in this room, and he basically just has an IV pole. He's just getting his antibiotics at this point.
He's
something.
in this. Yeah, he's in a concrete bunker.
Yeah,
and he's got very minimal equipment.
Yeah.
That didn't seem believable to me.
No,
it did not seem like the right amount of equipment.
And it looks like they've just like taken a storage room and wheeled him in there.
That I kind of buy. They don't know what he is.
I don't know.
Because they start talking to him in English.
Well, Carl comes in and starts questioning him. Leo seems to be sort of half awake, and Carl says, like, do you speak Swedish? And then says something in English, and then Leo kind of half opens his eyes and says, I want a lawyer.
Good for you, Sweden. In that you live in a
Applause
world...
for Sweden.
In the world of Sweden, somebody who is walking the line between being a Hubot and being a human is extended legal representation, no question.
But he is mostly human, and he has skin and scars and blood, and so even though they know something is weird about him, I think... yeah, he still gets to ask for a lawyer because he is a person. Huh?
But if this were a U.S. show, I do not think he would get a lawyer. Because he's this unusual thing. He's not a Hubot. He's got to have technology that does not exist anywhere else in the world.
What would happen in Canada?
I have no idea. We would probably ask the U.S. if it was okay. I have no idea. But again, it's that military application, which we haven't seen a hint of whether or not there is a military application of Hubots. I think that would be a big deciding factor in whether or not to extend legal rights to zombie Hubots, zombie people, cyborgs. Whether or not cyborgs, like yourself,
like myself,
get legal rights.
Right.
It's just a matter of how much is replaced by robot parts.
Oh, it's proportionate.
It's proportionate. I mean, they've seen enough of Leo to know, and I am assuming they've given him all the scans to know that he doesn't just have a
well, they would have had to do a scan to know his brain was functioning, and they would have popped him in an MRI there.
It seems obvious that whatever the port into his side is not just a modified pacemaker. It is something else. Yeah. Anyway, that's really all we get of Leo this episode.
Yeah.
But exciting. It's good that he's still around, and he's asked for his lawyer. Maybe we should then...
go to that storyline?
Yeah, the Engmans.
What's up? Engmans.
We start out in the kitchen, where it all happens in the Engman family, the heart of the home.
It is the heart of the home.
And Tobey is translating some essay from Swedish into English for class, and wants to use Anita, and Inger won't have that for I don't know what reason.
Well, because she says we have a dictionary,
they have a physical Swedish to English dictionary.
That's right, and she just
Do you have a dictionary anymore?
A print dictionary?
Yeah.
I do.
You do?
I do.
Okay. I got rid of mine because I have, what is it called? The internet. I did a little bit of translating from English to Swedish.
You did recently.
In between one of our previous episodes where you promised with all your heart to do a recording of the All in the Family theme into Swedish, and I did you the favor of translating those lyrics for you to help you out.
It was a big favor.
But Google Translate was what I did. I think if I would have done it with a book, it would have taken me forever.
It would have. So why can't Tobey just use Google and not Anita? If Tobey was going to use Google Translate, and he would experience what you did as far as it's not going to come out exactly right.
Came out really well. I just needed rhymes.
Oh,
I had to make it rhymes. That's the only thing that caused the delays. Oh yeah, it rhymes.
I know it does. It's very impressive. I found the translation of the All in the Family theme lyrics an enjoyable read.
Yeah.
And I have started working on my musical interpretation of it.
That's good because we have a lot of Christa fans of her music. Listen to this show.
Of her music?
Yeah.
Or my music.
There are some Christa Couture fans who listen to the show, and they confuse you with her because you sound very similar.
Do we?
Yeah. You sound a lot alike. Do you know? She's a Vancouver-based singer-songwriter. I don't know where she is now. Yeah. She's okay.
So, yeah, she is not working on the translation or the performance of the Swedish version, but I am. And that's happening. Right, so you totally threw me off.
I did. Tobey goes into Hans's library to...
Right, to find a dictionary.
Yeah. I noticed that Hans and Inger take terrible care of their book. They have no dust jackets on any of their books.
No?
No, none.
As he's getting the dictionary, he sees what's been hidden behind a few books, the sex chip.
The little metal business card shaped sex chip holder?
Yeah. Just as he's looking at it, Hans comes into the room and he sort of quickly puts it away and closes the cupboard. But when Hans comes in, he knows right away what's happened. Yeah. He knows that Toby found the chip, but he doesn't acknowledge it in the moment. He's just like, oh, do you need a ride to school? And kind of glancing at the bookshelf and glancing at his son, and Toby's like, nope.
It is an awkward dad moment. And I think you get a sense that Hans does not like to have the father and son chats. I think he's a good dad.
I think he's a good dad.
Or he's trying to be.
He's trying. When we see him later, can we talk about that scene? Should we go?
Yeah, we can go wherever you want.
Later, Tobey goes back to find the chip again, and it's gone. So then he knows that his dad has taken it. There's a scene...
It's near the end of the episode.
That I really like, because Hans decides like he should talk to his son about this, and he goes into Tobey's room, kind of gets squeezed into this weird chair, like not very comfortably seated, looks really awkward.
His room still bothers me. It's all car posters. There's not a single band poster, but every time we see him, he's wearing those green... He's wearing those green headphones.
Right.
Where I assume he listens to music, but I don't know what he's listening to. It drives me nuts.
I don't know.
Hans walks in, and he thinks he's been caught, because we know Hans is considered sexing it up with Anita.
Right. That's why he kept the chip.
And I think he probably forgot about it. I don't think he just sort of kept it just in case.
Well, he makes this like kind of joke to Tobey saying, oh, I'm terrible at throwing away things.
It's so dumb, because it's like... You hid it, though.
But I feel like at first Hans is kind of trying to cover up, saying, oh, yeah, I mean, I just kept it, like, maybe later. Or he's trying to come up with a story to tell Tobey that in a way covers it up, but then he actually kind of lets it go. Becomes a little more honest.
He says, he's trying to be very delicate, and then he says, I don't know.
And he's like, fuck it, I don't know.
And he's like, but I didn't use it. And he's like, that'd be...
And Tobey
finishes his sentence with sick. And he's like, yeah, you're right, it'd be sick.
And then Tobey starts to cry.
Yeah.
And another kind of awkward trying to figure out how to parent a teenager moment, Hans goes and sits next to him and
pats him on the back.
But sort of carefully, like he goes to touch, he starts to rub his back a little, but then he brings his hand back.
Which seems about right.
Yeah,
you have not been a teenage boy.
No, I haven't.
Whose dad struggled to try and connect with.
Did you have that experience?
My dad was a lot like Hans.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my dad was great. He drove me crazy with the amount of Star Trek he watched.
Like original Star Trek?
Original Star Trek. Oh, and he watched all the other ones. My dad didn't quite know how to connect with me with, the weird music I listened to and the weird hair colors I would occasionally come home with.
And would he have, if you were sitting on your bed crying, would he sort of pat your back and then give up?
I think if I were sitting on my bed crying, he would probably have asked my mom to come in.
He'd be like, just can you go talk to our kid?
Yeah, I think he would have preferred to have my mom do it. Our interactions would have been very much like that.
I see. I think Hans is feeling and isn't totally threatened by the emotion that's taking place. What I read from it, it's like if Tobey were younger, I think he would have maybe held Tobey. I think he probably was an affectionate dad, but they're at that boundary now. Where it's like, oh right, you don't want me to put my arms around you.
That is exactly what
you're a young man.
Right. Now that age for young men, just so you know, comes about
in case I am a teenage boy at some point.
In case you start hanging out with teenage boys.
Or that.
Yeah. Anytime from 8 and up. You can get this sort of emotional distancing happening.
All right.
Tobey asks, that there's something wrong with him and he needs help. And Hans, he falters again and says, well, would it help if we got rid of Anita? Because we'll do that. We'll get rid of Anita.
And Tobey feels more like he's like, no, there's really something wrong with me.
He's like, no, this is...
a difference. Tobey himself is really freaked out by the fact that he's been feeling attracted to Anita.
Yeah.
And he thinks he might be attracted to other Hubots because he's saying it's not just Anita.
Right.
And so Hans says, well, I'll find a therapist for you, and we won't tell Mom, and it's just between us.
It's not terribly clear, but I don't get the sense that it is he's not trying to cure his kid.
He's just gonna get some support.
He's just, or support, or just getting to the root of it. And
there probably already are counselors who are specializing in helping people navigate Hubot attachment or attraction, especially if it's being seen as something deviant.
Right.
He's gonna find an appropriate psychologist or someone who's gonna understand the issue and talk to Toby about it. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, the Engmans, Matilda tells her mom about what she learned about Mimi. Yeah. Saying, like, come on, like, she's been liberated, and it's the first time anyone has found one of, David Eischer's Hubots, and don't you think we should do something?
Yeah. David Eischer, I think we get a real sense of that he's a name that's known in the world. And that after he died, all of his Hubots went missing.
Right.
And I think Inger is seeing Matilda's story as this dramatic teenage retelling.
Angst moment, yeah.
Or just that kind of teenage view of politics where everything is the world against you, conspiracy.
This scene where they're having lunch in Inga's office.
Yeah.
Again, just highlights the problems with Inga's hair that we started to see in the last episode.
You have such a problem with Inga's hair.
I can't handle it right now. And
I have a problem with Niska's makeup, so...
Oh, do you?
It's just too much for me.
Is it? It's over the top.
It's a choice I don't understand.
The only other thing we see with Inga are around the court case, that she has a meeting with Pilar and Christa and the lawyer for the club. And Pilar is late.
Now his name is Göran Peters.
And he eats apples.
I love his apple eating.
So they're waiting for this meeting. They're antsy. Pilar is late. Pilar, who
she's cocky.
She's feeling like a cowboy. She, she's kind of runs in there and she's like, okay, this is happening.
Yeah, and I wrote down that she cannot keep quiet. No.
And then the lawyer has some questions.
Well, he cites something, he refers to something called transhumanism.
Ooh, these sort of issues with Hubots being a global phenomenon.
Yeah.
So it's not only in Sweden.
And then he throws out a bunch of magazines on the table. He throws out Playbot, Hublove, Transmachine, and Hubot Secrets. Mm-hmm. This was the most offensive moment for me. From a design standpoint. This show's been really good with not being lazy with props and backdrop. They're doing a lot with nothing. Although, no, I guess there are a couple of moments. The clothing rack in the middle of the Hubot Mart.
Right, you don't like that.
Jane Timglass's apartment. There are these little moments which occasionally take me out of the world.
Yeah, and this moment did.
For me, probably took no one else out of it.
I thought of you.
Did you think of me? Yeah. Because they were so poorly
Only
designed.
I was like, oh shit, now I'm going to have to hear about this.
You are. Anyway, I did end up redesigning a couple of magazine covers.
You did.
For Playbot and Hublove.
You greatly improved on the Playbot issues shown in this episode.
Yeah. So, Lars Lundstrom, if you're listening, or the people at the production company who's doing the English translation. Loved your Life on Mars, by the way. I want to give them a shout out. Life on Mars, starring John Sims.
Yeah.
And,
I'm down.
Anyway, fantastic show. Watch Life on Mars as well. You can contact me about using my revised covers.
Yeah, and I think we are going to release them out into the world because they're really great.
Mm-hmm. So, Göran Peters threatens to do an independent examination of these Hubots to see if they've been modified.
Right, because he's saying, these magazines, you can find out how to modify them, and, we're just wondering, if you've done that. And Pilar really, very quickly gives away,
sheepish look.
Sheepish, and Inga's face is just what?
Göran punctuates his point by taking a big old bite out of his apple.
Right, which later, when he leaves the law offices, he throws the core at Pamela, the receptionist, and she grabs it in one Hubot move. This story then ends with Inga's talking to... What's her boss's name?
Henning.
She's talking to Henning and saying, I didn't know that this was coming, so they caught me off guard. But we find out that, for whatever reason, Inga is now going to be the lawyer representing Leo. So, again...
Who really wants to meet Inga.
Tied together.
So, yeah. So, other than... And I guess the rest of our Engmans is our Lennart. Which we only get we don't see Odie at all this episode.
No.
But we get a little reminder of Odie when we first see Lennart. And Lennart He's just looking...
Oh, he's looking at his little repaired boat.
he's thinking back fondly on memories of Odie, who, as far as he knows, Odie is now gone.
Yeah, he goes to painting class.
He does. He goes to painting class.
That's where I wondered I tried to figure out what song was playing there, and I don't have Shazam, and I didn't feel like downloading it, and I tried to, from the lyrics, get what it was, but I liked the song playing in the background at the seniors' painting class.
Okay.
And at class, he, across the room, spies a pretty lady, a rather vivacious woman who you probably looked it up, but her character's name is Solveig.
No, I did not look her up.
Her name is Solveig. She's played by Agneta Allen.
Yeah. I really like her.
Oh, she's very likable.
And I like that they made her... Leonard seems attractive. Leonard is a lean, kind of skinny man, and Solveig is...
She's curvy.
She's curvy and loud. She's curvy and loud.
She's got a big laugh, and she's cracking herself up, and she's laughing at his jokes.
Yeah.
And
to the point where Leonard and Solveig get kicked out of class.
Yeah. The instructor's like, maybe take it somewhere else, guys. She gives him her phone number and says, let's get into trouble sometime.
After saying your place or mine, which I think if Leonard would have said either of those, she would have been
it would have happened right then.
Yeah, it would have happened right then.
But he was a little surprised, and she was like, oh, kidding.
Yeah. And Anki Larson, who plays Vera, does a lovely, kind of dirty look while being completely blank. It seems very difficult to do, but she does a very good job of doing a blank, dirty look.
That's not good. It's not going to be good for his health. That's what she's thinking.
I think that probably sums that up really well.
Back at Leonard's house, he is lying in bed reading Image Matters for Me. For men.
Image Matters for Men.
How to Dress for Success, which is a real book.
Yeah.
Published in 2004. It's available online.
Oh, you looked this up.
Hopefully at your local independent bookstore or library. I guess maybe he wants to make changes to his look. He's getting ready.
He knows he's going to go on a date, which has been a while, I'm sure.
It's been a while. And he starts to have chest pain. And it cuts to Vera staring directly at the camera.
Right.
She goes into the room and in a very orderly fashion, starts to give him chest compressions.
Yeah.
Inga, while she's having the lunch with Matilda, gets the phone call that Grandpa's had a heart attack.
We basically get them all in the hospital. We find out that Vera is the hero. She sort of saved the day.
His life.
And it ends up being that this time in the hospital, because Vera was so good, the doctor decides to send Leonard home
you basically
early.
have like a nurse at home. You can go home early.
Yeah, you can go home. He tells him about his digital clone.
Right. Well, he says, you know that you have extended life insurance, and we learned, because we didn't know what happened to Leonard's wife, but he does say here that she died. That he had bought this sort of life insurance thinking that he would probably die first. And the doctor tells him, well, you know that it includes you cloning yourself if you want. The Hubot's not included, but you can clone yourself for $30,000.
Yeah, a scan.
I mean, it's valued at...
Well, it's Kroner.
Whatever.
It's a scan with voice print and profiling. Hubot not included. And the doctor says he recommends that Leonard do it soon.
Yeah.
So the next time Leonard is back at home, he's reading through his pamphlet on whether or not he's going to get a digital clone.
Yeah.
And his lady shows up. Solveig shows up with flowers.
Before that, I mean, when he's back at home, Vera's being very attentive of him. He's playing solitaire at the table.
Oh, yeah.
She places a carrot in front of him.
A sad carrot.
Pulls out the phone number that Solveig wrote down, which has a really oddly drawn heart on it.
Yeah.
It's a weird little shape. And
she was writing it in her hand. Seemed legit.
Yeah, and he throws it away. He's come home from his heart attack, and he's like, oh man, no. The last time we see him, Vera's outside mowing the lawn, and they show that he lives on Bergtolsvägen. They show the street sign of where he lives, which I looked it up. There's no street view. I was like, is Vera going to be blurred out on the lawn?
We're going to go, our Real Humans tour is going to be
of
awesome.
Stockholm, I know.
Yeah.
But yes, beautiful, vivacious Solveig comes down the street with a bouquet of roses, lets herself into the house, I think.
No, well, Vera follows her in.
Followed, yeah, and Solveig kind of gives Vera a little, tosses a rose at Leonard, and they're off.
Yeah, she's like, want to mess around?
Yeah.
It's cute.
I like her
and
style.
he He seems down with that.
Oh, I think so.
And Slovik seems to have no problem with Vera being present. Just like there's a vacuum cleaner in the corner.
Basically.
So poor Vera having to watch that. Because I don't think they'd ask her to leave the room.
I think Leonard would.
Leonard might. He's, yeah. He's cheering up a little bit.
Yeah, it's nice to see Leonard feeling good. He's been so bummed and feeling so shitty about Vera being there and losing Odie.
Yeah.
And you know, and he's getting he's getting some attention and he's getting to laugh. I'm happy for Leonard. What else happens in this episode? I mean, there's the rogue bots.
Actually, no, let's talk about Roger. Because Roger has just exploded up the Hubot Mart, and it's clearly impacting him. He's having some feelings, some confusion.
He's feeling the feelings.
Which get a little more complicated.
We first see them right after the explosion, him and Malta in some restaurant.
Oh, Levan's.
Did you try to find it?
It's a real restaurant.
I couldn't find it. Are we going there when we go in?
Sure.
Hopefully they have a veggie burger. He
has no appetite.
I think he's in shock.
Yeah.
Malta, who is getting a rush from the experience, is like chowing down. He makes the phone call.
He calls the news desk.
The news desk to claim the crime, saying that this is the bombing was what?
Warning 1, and that there will be a warning 2 if their demands aren't met.
And we demand all Hubots are banned.
Yeah.
Roger, he looks uneasy.
Yeah.
We see him next at work.
Back at work.
In the lunchroom playing cards with George.
Yeah.
And
George is ready to go on the town.
They have this funny little exchange where he's like, I know where to go. Like, you and me will work as a team. We'll be like lions.
Well, yeah.
We're gonna hunt like lions. And Roger's like, the female lions do the hunting. And then did you notice Roger does this cute little thing with his hand?
What cute little thing is that?
Where he's just talked about the lions do the hunting, and George says, is that true? And Roger goes, yeah. And he does this little like...
Oh, he does a little cat.
He does a little like lion paw hand.
Right.
And what I want for my birthday is for someone to make me an animated GIF of Roger and his lion hand. It was like the best part in the whole episode. Second to Hans squeezing into the chair. That was my other favorite moment.
Okay.
Boss lady, whatever her name is, we know it. She comes in and she's like, hey, I have a visitor.
Yeah. She seems a little concerned about Roger. And I didn't know whether or not it was because we find out that B has done herself up.
Yeah, we need to talk about B if we're going to keep talking about Roger.
Well, I guess that puts us back. Let's reset and we'll talk about Niska and B. We see them in Roger's house and they are talking about Leo, saying that if he's arrested, that B knows what to do, which basically I think means removing his brain from his head.
They have this exchange when they're leaving the house. B had maybe a maternal moment when she says, you let Leo go. Why?
That doesn't feel like a maternal moment.
No, it's more of the like,
it's more
we
of
need him and we
you
need
were
his
supposed
brain.
to be together. How could you fuck up by letting him leave?
I just keep hoping that people care about each other.
I do not think most of the Hubots express any genuine compassion, with the exception of perhaps Mimi or Anita and Odie. But I think Odie's... Actually, I don't think Odie expresses compassion. It's confusion.
He's confused. As they're driving down the road and talking about Leo, saying, he's got this information in him. Niska says, watch out for the drunk. And they swerve on the road. And it's revealed that that's Leo before he'd been picked up by the ambulance lying in the road. And
that's their little weird near miss. But
it's because
I kind of feel like they'd recognize. He's not wearing different clothes. I feel like they'd recognize Leo on the street.
Silly
but they are involved with the discussion about removing Leo's brain from his skull.
Yeah, and it's nighttime.
Back at Osa and Ava's house.
Yeah. Gordon, who never takes his backpack off. Comes downstairs. And I'm just gonna say, as far as hair goes, I think that Osa looks a lot nicer when she has the loose tendrils.
Oh, okay.
In her bathrobe.
I thought you were going to say Gordon looks like a 40-year-old 1980s lesbian.
I wasn't gonna say that. Is that what you think?
I wrote it looks like somebody who would have guest starred on Ellen or on a Roseanne episode.
Is it the scarf?
It's the scarf and the weird hair and the like Ken doll skin. I'm gonna get some flack for that.
I like his look, but I maybe like 40-year-old lesbians from the 80s. Actually, I do.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I like Gordon. I don't know.
Maybe.
I hadn't pieced those two things together, but both of those things are true.
Right.
I was mostly thinking about Osa in her robe looking a little more undone.
I feel like if Osa, instead of throwing a Bible down on the table when they first met, would have slid a Katie Lang CD across the table, Gordon's character development would have made just as much sense.
His fanaticism would have just gone in a different direction.
Yeah.
He was ready to dig into something, and the Bible was there. He comes downstairs to, again,
Sorry, I'm gonna get in trouble for that, and I apologize for I can't help it.
Osa is reading the paper and looking relaxed and pretty. And he says, "Thank you for lending this to me." And she says, "You can keep it," which he's like, he's touched in a way. And he says, "I wish I was human, because then I would believe in God."
And all the light and the stuff that involves.
And she says, "Well, can't you believe in God now?" And he says, "Am I allowed to?"
Yeah.
And she says, "Of course, if you want to." And he's quite pleased with that.
He's pretty thrilled. And then Flash comes to get him. Niska's sent Flash to go get Gordon. Gordon's very excited and tells Flash that he's been invited to church.
Yeah, because Osa said, "Come to sermon sometime."
And Flash is...
She's so sarcastic and mean to him, and then he doesn't even get the sarcastic remark.
He says, "Oh, we get to go to church." And Flash says, "It sounds like a party." And Gordon takes that very literally. She explains sarcasm.
Yeah. Flash picks up a wedding photo of Osa and Ava and goes, "Ew." Which Ava is coming to the room and overhears.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, Flash insults Ava.
Calls her a homo freak.
Is a translation?
Yeah, I think that's about right.
That's about right. Ava basically shoos them like raccoons back into the attic. She's sort of like, "What? What?" She's like, I think she's holding a paper or something. She's like, "Just go away, go back to the attic. Why did you just call me?"
She's never been happy with these Hubots in the house.
No, Ava has never been comfortable with it.
So there's a scene where there's clearly been a discussion that's gone on in the background between Niska and Osa and Ava.
Right, Niska saying, "What happened? What did you do to upset them?" Flash denies the homophobic slur.
Yep, and she said she was sorry.
Yeah.
And then she denies that it happened.
Right, and she says, "I have apologized," which she's lying.
Which she yells, and her eyes blink like crazy.
I know, so when she gets angry, she gets all... The only other time I feel like we've seen that kind of rapid eye movement is when Odie was having his corrupted files fixed.
Yeah.
But apparently...
perhaps this is a result of Flash, we know, likes to overcharge. And perhaps the overcharging leads to some file corruption. Which could cause her lying and her stubbornness. Anyway, her blinking, I wrote down, is a tell.
Is a towel?
Is a tell.
Oh.
It is a tell that she is lying. When she blinks like crazy,
yeah,
we know she's lying.
And they ask Gordon, and Gordon does not lie and says, "Nope, she said the mean thing."
And Flash says, "Only the fat, ugly, old, weak, crippled, and deceivers join the church, so you'll fit right in."
She's mean to Gordon.
Yeah, she's mean to Gordon. But Gordon, after having his feelings hurt, responds to Flash and says, "You just have to apologize. Is that so hard to do?" Mm-hmm.
Cut to Flash apologizing.
Mm-hmm.
Not very convincingly. Niska's standing by her side, and she says, "I'm sorry, it won't happen again." And
Ava accepts the apology, but there's a little exchange between her and Osa. She's clearly getting frustrated by Osa's pro-Hubot stance, which we see at the end of the episode. Osa is a little overboard.
Yeah.
And Ava says to Osa, "If you want me to treat Flash like a human, I will do that." And she lays into Flash and says, "Why does my orientation bother you? What makes you so angry?" And then says, "You are no one. You're a nothing."
To which Flash says she does think that women should be with men and have children. And
which she's talked about before.
She has expressed those views before. Niska chimes in saying Flash's values do not reflect that of the group.
Yeah. And that we'll have a little talk with Flash. And Flash is rolling her eyes while this is happening.
Basically. Later, back in the attic, Niska threatens Flash. She picks her up off the ground and says, "This can't happen again. You can't behave this way."
Yeah.
And then kind of drops her back onto the ground. Which then leads to, that night, Flash packs her bag and sneaks out.
Well, she does not forget to take her May-June 2011 issue of Veranda magazine.
She sure does not. She loves that.
She does dig in. She just can't help but be mean to Gordon.
I know. Even in saying goodbye, she says, I'm getting away from here. And he says, from us? And she says, from you.
And from you. Like, she says it twice. And that she's going to go back. And it sounds like she's just going to go back to her life of being a regular
She says, I want to go back just as it once was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then what does she give him? Does she give him cufflinks?
They look like cufflinks. At first I thought they were like earrings, but then you kind of see the shape of... They don't do a close-up.
Or tie pins.
Yeah. She gives him something and he kind of wraps his hand around it.
Yeah.
Niska steps out of the shadows as Flash is leaving and says, let her go.
And then Gordon goes back to church.
Yeah, so Gordon goes to his first religious service, I think. He's sitting in the front row. Everyone's singing. Mm-hmm. He starts to sing along.
Oh, and he stands up, and Osa's looking a little uncomfortable.
He starts to sing quite loudly, and he has a beautiful voice, actually. Yeah. But he's not singing, like, in time with everyone else, and he's in a different key. And Osa gives him this little hand motion of, like, shh, just, you know. But he seems to take that as a cue to...
stand up.
Stand up! And give her... The congregation is uncomfortable with his presence.
Oh, yeah. And Osa's sermon basically talking about the value of Hubots in society, and then compares the plight of Hubots to that of African slaves 200 years ago.
Yep.
One of the characters, I'm just going to say, one of the characters says to compare this machine to humans 200 years ago is disrespectful to us and to God. Mm-hmm. I have already made the comment about Gordon looking like a 1980s lesbian, so I'm not going to comment at all on the comparison between Hubots and slavery. It's just these topics are starting to feel really loaded.
Well,
and I will walk directly into Gordon looking like a 1980s lesbian.
Well, this Osa is walking right into this very loaded subject because she's saying they care for our children, they have dreams, and we used to say about slaves that you could own them and that they would not break, and that's what we were saying about the Hubots. And people are like, yeah, but they're Hubots. So simmer down, Osa.
She's losing her already small congregation.
She sure is.
And they physically remove Gordon from the church.
Yeah, and he runs down to the end of the yard, and perfect timing. Niska and Marilyn and Fred have got a pickup truck, and he jumps in the back, and they wheel off down the dirt road. So they're off. They're leaving that town.
So, the only thing that we have left now is our Roger and Bee moments.
Ove.
Uva.
Oompa Loompa.
So, Ova and Bee, as you remember, are investigating. They are now investigating our Hubot crimes, which I guess an explosion at a Hubot Mart counts. And they are looking over the body of the remains of Max. Bee walks in a little late, and Ova asks how she's doing and why she's late and where she's been. Bee talks about her mom breaking her leg. Ova just drops in and asks, oh, how old's your mom? She says, 92. Ova says, you are looking really young for somebody who's 92. And
she waits because, 62. Right.
Yeah. And that she hasn't had breakfast. And then she gives Ova, we find out, has turned 50. Mm-hmm. And he is gifted
the little robot USB keychain that she had copied Leo's.
It's the code.
That's what we think.
Bee has handed the code to Ove for some reason.
Yeah. For some kind of safekeeping? Or why to him? I mean, she sealed it so that it's not going to be obviously... Like, I don't know if he's going to know it's a USB stick. Because remember how she melted
did seal
the thing?
It,
so he just has a little... As far as he knows, he got a little robot keychain.
Yeah. But anyway, Ova leaves the room to go and do whatever. And Bee looks over. Max takes a taser out of her jacket and zaps the back of his head, which I'm assuming is like wiping all the data. Yeah. Then she's decided she has to recharge, and then she puts a pill in her mouth.
She doesn't yet, but she takes a pill out of a little case and has it in her hand, and she takes off her jacket and finds the cord at the back of the room and plugs in.
And then Ova is in the hallway, and he gets a call about Leo. Mm-hmm. So he goes back in to get Bee so they can go, because they caught their murderer.
And finds her charging and confronts her and says, what's happening? She
pulls
starts
a
to
gun
try and
on
leave. He
her.
pulls a gun on her, and that's when she bends over onto the table that she pops that little pill in her mouth.
Which, far too obviously. Because if she was preparing to have this, what we find out later is a tear gas pill in her mouth, I don't know why she wouldn't just put it in there right away.
Right, because it wasn't going to affect her.
Well, even if, while he pulls the gun on her, she could have just popped it in her mouth right then, not while she's leaning over the table.
Yeah.
It seemed really
a
awkward.
Funny move. He pushes her hair aside and discovers that she has a USB port and that she is a Hubot.
Yeah. And that is when she spits
in his face and races away.
Yeah.
Or runs. It's not a race.
So Ove has to have a little talk with Carl from Intelligence.
Yeah.
And Carl asks him how it could happen.
Yeah.
And kind of chides him and says, I can't, how could you have never noticed that she was a Hubot? You are
How could have the
her.
police academy never noticed? She doesn't seem to have a fixed address.
They do mention that they have to, later in the episode, that they have to investigate how this whole thing happened.
Right, how did she get in there? And Ove says, check the necks of your people.
Yeah. He does ask Carl how many Hubots Carl has missed in his career. And Carl
as mistaken for humans, yeah.
As mistaken for humans, and Carl says none.
None.
And my thought was, you only think none because you don't know.
Yeah.
You can't know the
Right.
answer to that. How
Good
many have you
point.
not caught?
Right?
So I'm siding with Ova.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's an honest mistake. And she's a crazy advanced Hubot. As we know from the eyebrows of some of even our latest model, Vera, does not have realistic eyebrows.
And B looks
real, Niska looks real.
Although when I first suspected she might be Hubot, it was because she looks a little fake. But you're right, not as fake as the other ones.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she is a more realistic Hubot, but did still look kind of plastic.
Which part of me wanted Ove to just say, have you seen her? Do you know what she looks like? She does not look like the rest of them.
Meanwhile, B, who has run from that place, has stolen some clothes. She's getting
She can rip
changed.
security tags off with her teeth.
She can with her teeth because she's a Hubot. And she apparently has some skills in special effects makeup. And she gives herself a fake black eye.
Which I thought was pretty... I did that once for somebody for Halloween. They wanted to look like they had a bruised eye, so I did that up for them. With no experience, it was fine. It looked believable.
Okay, so it's not hard.
Not really, no.
Okay.
I'm sure if you put on makeup every day to make yourself look like a human, you can probably do a bruise okay.
Yeah, that's all it takes. And is that why you were able to do a bruise okay? Because you wear makeup every day?
Well, as you know, pseudo-robot, I have to...
It's a very carefully placed stubble.
Yeah, I have to inject stubbly hairs into my face of different lengths every day. It's difficult.
It's very convincing.
So, B does end up going to visit Roger at work.
Yes, which is where we left our Roger story. So he goes down to see who's come to see him. It's B.
She asks Roger to take care of her and claims that her partner who assaulted her is Ove.
Yeah. She said that she was in a relationship. She hadn't mentioned him before because she's not in love. And says, I don't have anywhere to go. Will you take care of me? Roger very quickly is like, yes, I will. And she's like, and not just for today, but
forever.
And not just a week. And he's like, yes. And
Roger's lonely, and she is a gorgeous woman. A gorgeous woman in need of help, needs a place to stay, and says, I really like you. Will you take care of me forever? Roger's going to say yes.
Roger is. I mean, he doesn't really think things through. He's impulsive.
No, we've seen him be...
He's not a big picture guy.
No.
So in the moment where he's in the car and this young beautiful woman is saying, shelter me, he's like, all right, yeah. And
he doesn't seem enthusiastic about it. It's just like...
A little bit.
To me, he seems, whenever he's in these elements, he just seems out of his depth.
And she says, okay, you finish work and I'll just wait in the car, because she's on the lam, and then we'll go home.
Yeah.
She's like...
Well, she's subtly manipulating him. Yeah. She knows what she's doing.
And he's like, yeah.
And we've seen Roger is he's a big guy, but he is a surprisingly meek man.
He's a meek man, and I think easily manipulated. Manipulated? Thank you, emphasis. They pull up at his house, and they see that Malta is there. Car's outside. Roger goes inside.
Yeah.
Malta's making coffee. And Malta's freaking out about B. Like, where is she? We haven't heard from her. And Roger, in this moment, shows again how he's kind of a meek man. He doesn't really know how to lie. He's like, I talked to her. No, everything's cool. And then he caves very quickly and says, okay, no, she's in the car. I mean, she's here. And Malta pulls a gun on Roger and is saying, someone needs to tell me what the fuck's going on.
Well, he says, I knew a girl would be trouble because they're so sensitive. And he says, how did you know I was here? To Roger, and then pulls the gun on him.
Right.
As in saying, how did you know I was at your house where you would come home to after work?
Malta is off kilter. We know that about him.
What we know about Malta. Malta used to be a postman before he lost his job.
Yeah.
He lives with his mother, who he claims it's to take care of her.
Yeah.
We know he has a huge arsenal of weapons in his bedroom. He is unbalanced.
He's unstable.
And I thought that he might have been on drugs or something during this episode, but I think it's probably equally as likely he's off drugs.
Yes. He might do well with medication.
Yeah.
Because he's quite paranoid. He pulls the gun on Roger.
And Roger just shrinks.
Again.
He's about a foot taller and about
and he's
150
a big guy, but he
pounds
does not,
heavier than Malta.
Yeah.
But anyway, B takes control of the situation by walking into the house.
Who is much more commanding.
Yeah.
Says, Malta, we don't want to be part of this anymore. Roger and I are on a different path. She takes Roger's hand. Yeah. And does Malta just leave?
Malta runs off.
And Roger collapses in sort of the post, I've just had someone holding a gun to my head.
Yeah.
Be unfazed. Later on, we see her take out her contacts.
Yeah, and starts charging. So we get to see her with blue eyes.
Yeah, we see her Hubot eyes.
eyes.
So she's been wearing special contacts to cover her Hubot eyes.
She's charging in the bathroom.
Charging, and she's like, I'll be there in a minute, honey.
Mm-hmm. Calling Roger honey now.
I know.
So we're basically now nearing the end of the episode. The only part that we left out was there was a scene back at the house with Ava and Niska, where Ava is clearly just sick of what's going on with Osa and the church.
Yeah, this has happened concurrent to the singing in the church.
Yeah.
And Gordon showing off his voice. Yeah, Ava goes to make a phone call. She's home alone.
And she decided she couldn't handle these Hubots in her house anymore, and she didn't trust them.
She doesn't trust them.
She's sick of she was called a homo freak.
And she doesn't like what Osa's doing. I think Osa's not really prioritizing Ava's feelings.
No.
And prioritizing her more sort of... there is a point where Ava says, oh, that's you, the preacher, talking. Like, can't you just care about what I'm saying? So Ava makes a phone call to the police.
Yeah.
And Niska walks in the room with a large knife in hand.
Mm-hmm. Terrifying.
And doesn't just hang up the phone or unplug it, but...
she cuts the cord. So she cannot make any more phone calls whatsoever. Niska says, what do you think will happen now?
Well, she says it when she's holding the knife to Ava's neck.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she cuts the phone, but then grabs Ava and holds it to her neck and saying, what do you think's going to happen if I have no feelings? Which in that second, I was like, oh shit, she's going to kill Ava. But we see just before the end that Ava is racing across a field towards the church.
So we talked about this last week about this show isn't handling cliffhangers very well. And I think that this scene perhaps better than last week. And I think you might agree with me this time.
I do agree with you this time.
Because the episode ends where Niska and Fred and they're all pulling up in a pickup truck just in time to catch Gordon being kicked out of the church.
And they're off safely. And Ava is running towards the church. Yeah, they could have left it with Gordon running out of the church and Niska holding a knife to Ava's throat.
And us just not knowing whether or not Niska just decided to kill Ava or not.
Yeah, but we know that she didn't.
I could have waited till the next episode before finding that out.
Yeah, they could have used that as a tease, their cliffhanger. Mm-hmm. What we know is that Niska and the gang get away and that Ava is running to tell Osa what happened, but it's going to be too late.
Yep. But I really liked the direction of this episode. I think this episode, as far as being filmed and the music and the acting...
really nice shots, yeah.
I think with the one exception of that weird, like, little cart shot of Mimi...
Yeah, I didn't like that.
...being pushed in, and the bad magazine covers.
Which you were able... I feel like you, by creating new covers, have sort of made amends in the world. for balancing out that bad moment of television.
Well, you can find people have this playbot idea has existed for ages. You can find a bunch of not terribly well done playbot prints on the internet of people who have done these little Android versions.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. So playbot might be from other things. There may be issues out there from other sci-fi movies where these are on magazine racks, these playbot issues.
Oh.
If anyone knows of any, they can write to us at cyborgversusrobot@gmail.com and tell us all the other things and find us on iTunes. Rate us on iTunes.
Yes, please. And Twitter, Cyber versus Robot, Tumblr, Facebook.
All the things.
All the things. We are on all the things, although we found out today that we're not on Instagram. We just found that out.
We don't really... Do we need to be on Instagram?
No, we don't. But that was just an odd way of stating it. Who were we saying? Who was it earlier? We're like, oh, he's on Instagram. David Rosenbaum, writer and director of The Trail's End and the visual effects guy. He's on Instagram, and he might be worth following because he is clearly a creative guy making cool things.
He's at Instagram at IamRobot at Instagram. I don't think he has a Twitter presence, but... Wow, that was weird. My printer just made its own little noises. I think it is telling us that it is time to stop, so we will stop. And
because Lexmark says so.
I guess when we see
I'm leaving.
You're
out
leaving.
Here.
You're done.
Yep.
Like, we can't talk about this anymore.
Yep. Bye.